It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuchendo. Thanks a lot for joining us. We have an interesting show for you today, considering the fact that Nigeria is always quite turbulent, is the word I'll use. But we want to take things nice and easy today, celebrating people who are doing us proud and just looking at, some of the lighter side of things on the continent and in Nigeria. Leaving politics aside for today, because I'm sure there's a lot of that. We overloaded on that this past week. I have a very special guest here today who, in the past couple of weeks, attempted a feat that a lot of us can only dream of and made Nigeria proud, put Nigeria on the map, but also raised some very important issues that we'll be talking about here today. She's a travel content creator, amongst many other things. Alma Asinobi, thanks a lot for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Good to see you back on land in Nigeria.
Good to see you too. Good to see you too.
So, for a lot of people who might not know, you did attempt to break the Guinness World Record, I believe.
That's right.
For the fastest time to be on every continent.
Yeah.
But you tried to do it with a Nigerian passport, which we all know has its own. Anybody who's traveled with a green passport knows that you travel with a lot of just hesitation and just hope that things go according to plan. You were trying to break how many hours?
So initially I was trying to break 73 hours.
Okay.
A week before my trip, some American Air Force veteran
with an easy passport.
With an easy passport, broke the record and took off like 10 hours from
I remember seeing you tweet
hours.
that.
It was chaotic.
So you made it even harder to do.
Exactly.
Now tell us what happened. Why did this start for you? Why did you want to do this?
So being Nigerian and traveling with a Nigerian passport, it has not been the easiest. There's some dreams that your geography sort of automatically just takes from you.
Yeah.
And you just feel like, well, yeah, this is not for me. To use the word, but yeah, this is just not for me. And I sometimes can be rebellious, and I'm like, okay, if something is harder, then it makes me want to do it more. And I'm like, I have to figure this out. I have to get it right. And so I wanted to travel just out of curiosity. I wanted to explore all the countries in Africa. So I did something. I wanted to do something called Project 54 2 years ago. But I realized it was actually so difficult.
Yes.
I think I would dare say it's harder to do that than travel to all 7 continents. In terms of visa restrictions and everything within Africa, it was really bad, trying to figure it out. And I felt, you know what, I would raise awareness for passport privilege and everything, but let's do an easier version of this. And so I just thought, okay, let me do this. I've always wanted to visit Antarctica. I've always wanted to visit Australia, Sydney specifically. So I just figured, yeah, I'll just do this. But there was specifically an issue, I think about a year or so ago. I applied for a visa. And this was
where now?
It was the Schengen zone, it was one of the Schengen countries. And they held onto my passport. They said it was going to take 2 weeks or so. But then they held onto my passport for over a month. And I just felt like a hostage. Like I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. You're holding onto my only travel document for this long. And it just felt like there's no definite time. And by the way, when the passport came back, the visa was refused. So I was like, okay. So
what was the point
of all of this? That was a turning point for me. And I just figured, why don't we talk about this? Why don't we shed more light on this issue? It's easy because you think of water, food, education, all of these very important things to talk about, but this sort of issue just gets treated as though you're fighting for your rights for expensive vacations. Yeah.
But it does restrict. I mean, if anybody who's tried to go to school anywhere, go to a conference, have a business transaction, you've experienced some sort of this. But so you of course, you started off in Africa, you went to South America, North America, Europe. I
started off in Antarctica, actually.
In Antarctica?
Yeah.
Africa?
I started off in Antarctica.
Then you went
to South America, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia.
How do you go to Antarctica? Is
Very
there a visa
question.
to there? And I know there are no flights per se.
Question, yes.
There are no commercial flights per se. So how did you do that?
So I had a lot of, I'm going to be admitting this on national television, but I considered every single way to get there. I actually reached out to, there was a Russian like base that was like, I was trying my best before. This was very, I can be a bit like
Yes.
that when I want to do something. I'm like, I need to find a way, even if like I'm in a fighter jet or I just need to get there.
Yeah.
So I reached out to so many, and so many people refused. But I found that there are some excursions that you could take.
Yes.
Most of them though where you have to sail, right? Like you go through the Drake Passage, you go on a boat and a cruise, and then you get there and come back. And I didn't have that time because you need at least 5 days to sail. And I just found that there were some fly cruise options, so you could fly there and cruise back, or you can cruise back, you know, back and forth. So I found a couple of options from Chile. Now the issue was, I needed a visa to get to Chile. And for me to get to Chile, if I'm going to leave Chile, go to Antarctica, come back to Chile, at that time I thought I needed a multiple entry visa, but they corrected me eventually that I didn't need one. However, I fought for a multiple entry visa. I got one, and then from there it was about a 2-hour flight from I think it's the southernmost airport in the world, on that side at least.
Yeah.
It's from Punta Arenas. So in 2-hour flight, I flew with a couple of scientists and researchers.
How long were you on Antarctica for?
About 6 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I flew back.
So you did Antarctica, then went to, so Chile, I guess, was South America
Yes,
for you.
yes.
Then where did you go to in North America?
I went to Dominican Republic.
Okay,
That's
Dominican
where my
Republic in
woes
North
began.
America.
Yeah.
Then Europe,
In Europe, I went to Madrid, Spain.
then Africa,
Cairo, Egypt.
then Asia,
Dubai, the UAE.
then
I went
Australia.
to Sydney, Australia.
So what informed your choices of these countries? Because I saw a lot of your tweets and things on social media about some airports have shorter transitions or airlines.
Yeah.
What informed it? Or did your Nigerian passport restrict you to these places?
Yes, that's a very good question. My passport did restrict me to certain places because, you know, when you have to put down your passport to get a visa here, you need to wait for the visa to get to you before you get your passport and take it to another embassy. So I had to have a healthy balance between in-person submission visas, e-visas, and visa on arrival visa. So I basically was trying to get as many anchor visas as possible. Getting a US visa gives you access to about 20 countries. Getting a UK visa gives you access to some other countries. Getting a Schengen visa doesn't restrict your European movement. So I kind of like just wanted to get those main ones. And then I knew that there were certain countries. This was from downloading flight data for like 2 years, from all the regions that I needed to, and I had to sort through all of so many like Excel sheets. I think they were getting in the thousands. And it took me almost a year to analyze all of this data. And I finally decided on the route that I wanted to take based on if they had a flag carrier that flew like very often.
Yeah.
I don't want to be stuck in a country where the first flight is by 2 a.m., the next flight is by like
The
10
next
hours
day
or
or
12.
something.
Yeah, like no, we're not doing that. Also, I didn't want to get to a country where the airport, because I had to leave the airport, get into the city, take a picture with a recognizable monument. And I didn't want to get into a country where, you know, the airport is about an hour or 2 hours away from the city.
True.
So I did all of that, all of those considerations. And yeah, I think well, that's another, that's another thing. But yes, I think that those are some of the things that with the visa, the proximity to the city center, the airlines available, the routes that, you know, we could see.
Yeah.
That made sense, yeah.
I know you had an issue in Australia, going to Australia, or was
Yes.
it in Australia that
Going
happened?
to Australia.
Tell us about that, because I know that made a lot of people very upset.
Yes,
But it
it
also
did.
hits home for a lot of people who understand what it means to hold a passport like ours and be detained at an airport just
Yes,
because.
just because.
Yeah.
It was very hurtful. I've officially cried on 4 out of 7 continents. I think that's a record on its own. That's a record on its own. But I mean, I wept at that place. Like
Where did this happen?
This was in Dubai.
Okay.
I had booked a flight. You know, at this point, I was already struggling. Like, I didn't have so much time. I think I jinxed it, really. I tweeted, 0 flight delays so far, no issues, guys, we're doing this. This was me getting to my 3rd continent. It was in Punta Cana. And then I had a flight to Paris. And the route that I had initially was going to get me to Australia in 59 hours, 46
So
minutes.
you would have done it?
I would have done it. And so first thing, they canceled the flight. Like, I would have done it with 5 hours to spare. And then they canceled the flight to Paris last minute. Like, I was the last person to board. I still have the boarding pass. To check in. I checked in, got my boarding pass. I was about to get, and then they called me back and said, they canceled the flight. The next available flight to Europe was Frankfurt. I ran to the boarding, like the check-in counter, and I said, ma'am, please, I need a flight. I need to be on this flight. And she was like, no. She did small shakara and said, oh, okay, fine, you can get on the flight. It's going to cost you X amount. I said, I don't care. Just get me on this flight. And then she was like, okay, fine, get me your passport. Blah, blah. Give her the passport. And you know when they just open the passport, like, look at it, turn around, and you're just like, oh, gosh,
not now.
What is this? And then she just turned around and looked at it and was like, do you have, like, German residency, or do you have a... I was like, no, just so this... I was like, yeah, but I have a Schengen visa. So she was like, that it's going to take like 45 minutes to verify with the German police, blah, blah, blah. She doesn't have that time. We're going to be... I was begging. And she was like, no, sorry, can't help you. And then I couldn't take that flight. That would have been... That was my alternative.
So you had a Schengen visa.
I did have a Schengen visa.
Germany is a Schengen country.
Exactly.
But they wouldn't let you on the flight just because you had a Nigerian passport.
And they were going to have to verify, do some things, and I'm like...
Verify the visa or verify the person?
I have no idea what that even means. You verified before giving me the visa. You had all my documents. You have, like... it was not... I mean, I don't know. I was going through a lot on that day. And so my last option was a flight to Spain. That flight to Spain was just... It was a last option. It was just the only thing I could do. I got there. They said, oh, the flight was booked. I said, that's not possible. I have to be on this flight. And then eventually I went to Cairo. So that kind of like derailed me. Went to Cairo, from Cairo went to Dubai. And then now this was my final stretch. And the closest place, the shortest flight from Asia to any Australian international airport was to Perth. And it was going to take me around 10-ish hours, maybe 9.5, 10. And then I was like, okay, I would do this, just get to Perth. And then I got to the check-in. I checked in, everything was fine. Got to the boarding gates, I was seeing the plane. Like, I could see the plane right there. And they're like, oh, yeah, you step aside. And then stepped aside. I'm not a stranger to step aside, because, I mean, they do this all the time. And then I didn't think, I kind of saw it coming, but I didn't think that it would lead to me ultimately not making that flight, which was very... And so I stepped aside, and they said, oh, they have to verify. Do I have a visa? I showed them the visa. It was an e-visa, so I showed them on my device. They have to verify the visa. What does that even mean? Like, you issued the visa.
Yeah.
You can tell that it's authentic.
At that point, were you still within the record?
At that
or you had realized you were not going to break it?
It was very thin.
Yeah.
There was a chance, but it was very, very slim. And I was like, okay, so I have to be on this flight. At least I need to get there in the shortest possible time. Even if I don't break the record, I need to get there as soon as possible. And they were like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then they dragged their feet. And I'm like, oh, boarding is closing. They have to shut the doors. I'm like, no way. And they're like, yeah. We have to shut the doors.
In how many hours did you do 7 continents eventually?
Eventually, I did 71 hours.
71
but at the 53rd hour, I had already done 6 continents.
Oh.
So I was...
Within.
And so I was like, okay, so what now? Because I have to be on this flight. There was no way. They eventually said, oh, we have other flights that are going to Australia. There's another flight going in an hour. But that flight is longer, right? So it's just going to take me so long. Yeah. Eventually, just was like, oh, I kind of like was going to go back home. But
well,
yeah.
Congratulations. You went to 7 continents.
I did.
With a green Nigerian passport.
Precisely.
In 71 hours. That is a record for, I mean, anybody who doesn't see that as a record. And most importantly, I feel like you've raised awareness for a lot of things that people might have taken for granted, like you said.
Yeah.
I've never been to Australia, but it's a country I always wanted to visit. And knowing now that there could be a situation where I would need to be verified, just makes me wonder, I guess it's a call out to the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I beg your pardon, the Commission on the Diaspora, all of these people who are supposed to have our interest at heart, to start making having a lot more conversations with a lot of these bodies to see that, maybe you might attempt it again. Is this something you think you will?
Right now, I don't think so. Probably do other stuff. But maybe if I had a different passport, probably.
Is this something you're going to do? Because a lot of you travel bloggers are buying passports now.
I wouldn't buy a passport. That's a whole different conversation.
Reject one.
If it was handed to me, yes, I
Yeah.
would take it, but I wouldn't spend money on buying the passport.
Thank you very much, Alma Asinobi. You can follow her on social media. I guess your social media handles are
Yes,
also
the
Alma
same, Alma
Asinobi.
Asinobi.
Very well done. Fresh from 7 continents, or
That's
6
right.
back on Africa now, the
Yes.
7th one.
Thank you
And
so much.
wish you all the very best. And thanks for putting us on the map.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Don't just stand